Proverbs chapter 20, verse 22. Do not say, I'll pay you back for this wrong. Wait for the Lord, and he will avenge you. The King James uses the phrase, wait on the Lord. That popped out at me because there are many verses, and we're going to look at some of them, but there are probably scores of verses in the Bible that talk about waiting on the Lord. I do not like to do that. I don't like to wait, period. Brian, who's a business analyst, gets frustrated at me sometimes because if he's coming home, we'll go out to eat. And we'll stop at a restaurant and the wait is 45 minutes to an hour. I'm not going to wait 45 minutes to an hour. But I will spend 45 minutes to an hour going to place, trying to find a place where there's no wait. And Brian says, if we'd have just stayed where we were, we'd be done eating by now. I don't like to wait. Brian and Kim live in Atlanta. They understand if they decide they're going to get together and go out to eat Friday night in Atlanta, they're going to wait a couple hours. So they just take their iPads and whatever, and then they're just going to wait. I do not like to wait. You look up impatient in the dictionary, my picture is probably going to be there. I do not like to wait. But what I have learned, or am continuing to learn through my walk with the Lord, is that waiting on God is a significant part of the Christian life. God apparently does not believe in microwaves. He believes in slow cookers. We think in terms of minutes. He thinks in terms of seasons and generations. And so one of the hardest things for people wired up like me to do is to learn to wait on God. I remember reading a story about a pastor whose name was R.W. Dale. And he was pacing in his office one day and apparently making a lot of noise as he paced. And finally, his secretary knocked on the door to his office and stuck her head in, and she said, "What's the matter, Pastor?" And he said, "Plenty's the matter. I'm in a hurry, and God isn't." And we understand that. God, are you going to fix this or not? Well over 30 years ago, I found a book by Andrew Murray called Waiting on God. It is the classic in this area. I recently discovered that it is available free online as a PDF. So if you've got a PDF reader, which you probably do on your device or on your computer, just go whatever your search engine is and do Waiting on God, Andrew Murray, M-U-R-R-A-Y. And one of the first things that pops up will be a PDF, and you can click that, download the PDF, and read it. It's a book of, I don't remember how many chapters, but they're only like 2 or 3 pages, and there's a prayer at the end of each one, and it is an excellent devotional guide. So if anything that we talk about today kind of piques your interest, I'd refer you back to that book because it is a tremendous classic on this topic that we're going to be looking at today. And I don't know, because again, it's been over 30 years ago, but I would imagine that probably that's where a lot of this came from, was his impact through his book. As you look about waiting on God in the scripture, you find that a lot of them come from the book of Psalms. David talked a lot about waiting on God. Now, one of the things that's a challenge in the study of the Bible is chronology and how long things took. Next week, we're going to be studying Joseph. Joseph was 17 when he had the dream that his brothers would bow down to him. About 13 chapters later, it happens. We think that's maybe 6 or 8 months. It was 13 years. And so when we study David's life, Samuel anoints him to be the king and says, God says he's disappointed in Saul. David, you're going to be the next king. And you read along and you think, well, 6 months later, David's king. Oh, no. It was 15 years from the time he was anointed to be king to where he became king just over Judah. And it was another 7.5 years, 22.5 years, till he was king over all of Israel. So no wonder David wrote so much about waiting on God. He knew he was going to be the next king 15 years before it became reality. Now, you know, if I preach very often, or if you talk to me very often, eventually we're going to talk about food. I ran across this in my study on waiting on God. If you want to eat in a hurry, you can drive through McDonald's and buy a Happy Meal. But if you want a gourmet meal, you know you'll have to wait a while. That's because great meals don't happen quickly or easily, no matter what the commercials tell you. I have never once seen or heard of anyone putting food in a microwave because they thought it would be tastier than something that came out of the oven or the crock pot. We make use of the microwave because we want to eat fast. We use the oven when we want to eat well. God's plans and promises are not of the microwave variety. God slow cooks his plans and his people to bring out the very best of them. You can almost plan on the fact God will make you wait for what is best. He's never late, but he's also seldom quick. But of this fact, I can assure you, when God's plan is for you to wait, he will make it worth the wait. Learn from David that waiting is a part of the normal Christian life. We will be tempted to shortcut this waiting, but let us resolve to be like David and to wait on the Lord to fulfill his purposes and his promises in his good time. Let us also be assured that while we wait, God is working in us to prepare us for the good things that lie ahead. Don't doubt that we shall see them. And devote ourselves to doing the good we know to do and that we are able to do while we wait. Now, if I say to you, what's the verse in the Bible about waiting on God? You may not know the reference, but you'll probably say something about Isaiah 40:31. Those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They'll mount up with wings as eagles. They'll run and not be weary, walk and not faint. And this word wait in our verse from Proverbs 20, in Isaiah 40, the other times the word is used, it means to hope strongly, to trust. And it's closely related to the New Testament concept of faith. So if it will help you to wrap your brain around what does it mean to wait on God, think of the word faith, trust, hope. In fact, often the New International actually translates the word hope. If you want to do a study of your own on waiting on God, it will be easier for you to do it if you'll get a King James concordance and look up wait, because the NIV translates this word several different ways, and the King James each time translates it wait. It also has the idea of twisting strands of a rope together so that it's stronger. And somebody said that's like exchanging my weak strength and wrapping it around God's steel cable strength. And when I'm weak, then I become strong. Now, I don't know if you make a distinction between a sermon and a Bible study, but if you do, this morning's going to be a Bible study. I have given you 2 pages of notes. All the scriptures that we're going to talk about are on them, and I'm just going to make a few comments here and there as we go through these verses. You have the verses so that you can do your own study and your own praying over this, but what I want us to do is look at why we should wait. What are the purposes that the Bible speaks about waiting on God? What are the promises for us while we wait? And then what should our attitude be during the process of waiting on God? Because you probably know, maybe in your own life, it's possible to wait and not really do it well. You wait and your blood pressure goes through the roof and your stress level goes through the roof. So what should our attitude be as we wait? So that's where we're headed this morning in this Bible study on waiting on God. The scripture gives us several different purposes for waiting on God. 1 Thessalonians chapter 1 verse 10 says, we wait for his Son from heaven. In other words, we're waiting on Christ to come back. And we are, aren't we? Donna and I were talking yesterday about just how messed up our world is. And I said, I wonder if part of the reason is God's trying to get his people hungry enough for heaven, to just say, please, Lord, enough is enough. But we wait on his son from heaven. I have learned and heard since the 70s. When I say something like that, man, I'm an old man. But I remember from the 70s hearing Christ is going to come back soon. We'd go to your church have watch night services where New Year's Eve you'd get together late so that you could be at church at midnight, and pray at midnight. And I'd hear them say, "This may be the last watch night service we're ever in." I remember them saying in the 1976 election, this may be the last election our nation ever sees. I grew up with Christ is coming soon. But yet here we are. Well, what was wrong? Well, there's a big difference in the word soon and the word imminent. The word soon means soon, in the next few minutes or whatever. The word imminent means we don't know exactly when, but it could be any time. It could be before I finish this sentence, or it might be 25 years from now. We don't know, but it's imminent. It could happen at any moment. The Bible does not teach, regardless of what you hear from the pulpit often, the Bible does not teach the soon return of Christ. It teaches the imminent return of Christ. John, in his Gospels at the end of the first century, said, we're in the last days. Get ready. Christ is coming back. When the angel told his disciples, this same Jesus is coming back, they were looking for him to come back right then. So we're still waiting. And we need to make sure that we understand that even though he could come back at any moment, we don't know that he's going to come back this year or next year or the next time the moon does something funky, He's going to come back at any moment. Be ready for him to come back at any moment. And don't be so hung up on, well, what does this mean? And what does that mean? And what does that thing in Israel mean? Just say, Lord, I need to be ready, for whenever you may come. It may be today. It might be in our grandchildren's years. I think it's more likely to be today than in our grandchildren's years, but we don't know. It's imminent. It could happen at any time. And so we wait for his son from heaven. Our verse where we started this morning in Proverbs chapter 20. Do not say, I'll pay you back for this wrong. Wait for the Lord. He'll deliver you. This is where we really struggle with our emotions, isn't it? When we have to wait for God to fix something that somebody did wrong. And we want to take vengeance into our own hands. And even though we know God said, vengeance is mine, I will repay, he never quite seems to do it as fast as we would like him to, or as publicly as we would like him to, or as severely as we would like him to. And so Solomon said, wait for the Lord, he'll deliver you. And as I was thinking about that, I thought about what Paul says in Romans chapter 12. Don't repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. If it's possible, as far as it depends on you, because Paul knew not everybody would live at peace with you. So he said, as much as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Don't take revenge, dear friends. Leave room for God's wrath. The indication there is, if we try to get involved getting our vengeance, we push out God. There's only room for either him or us to take vengeance. Because God says, it is mine to avenge, I will repay. On the contrary, if your enemy's hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him something to drink. Then you'll heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Wait for God to settle the score. That's hard to do. If you have been wronged, and many people know you have been wronged, you want God to just immediately and publicly and dramatically show that you were right. He rarely does that. And so Solomon says, wait for the Lord. And I've become convinced that sometimes it's going to be eternity before the balances are set right. Wait for the Lord. Isaiah 33 verse 2. O Lord, be gracious to us. We have waited for thee. Be our strength every morning and our salvation or deliverance in times of distress. One of the purposes we wait on God is for his strength. Lord, we have waited for you. Be our strength every morning. That really goes back to what Isaiah is going to say in chapter 40. When you wait on the Lord, you renew your strength. And sometimes the strength is mounting up with wings as eagles. There's a crisis, and you need to be able to handle the crisis. Sometimes it's just a little extra burden, and you need to be able to run and not be weary. But most of the time, it's the dailiness of life and the challenge to walk and not faint. Lord, be gracious to us. We have waited for you. Be our strength. Psalm 106, verse 13. This Psalm 106, it's a powerful psalm. It's the story of Israel's failure. And verse 13 is the key verse. They soon forgot what he had done and did not wait for his counsel. Did you ever get in a hurry and not wait for God's counsel before you did something? How'd that turn out for you? Usually not real well. We need to learn to wait for God's counsel. Wait for God's direction. Wait for God to say, this is the way, walk in it. Isaiah again, chapter 30, verse 18. This is an interesting verse. It'll bring you up short. Therefore will the Lord wait, that he may be gracious unto you, and therefore will he be exalted, that he may have mercy on you. For the Lord is a God of judgment. Blessed are all those that wait for him. So you've got two people waiting here. You've got the Lord waiting so that he can be gracious to us. And you've got us waiting to be blessed by him. And I was, why would he say that the Lord is waiting so that he might be gracious to us? I think sometimes the Lord is waiting to bless us because he knows that we are not yet best prepared to receive the blessing. You know, a lot of times the reason for the waiting is preparation. You know, a farmer may have everything ready to plant his field, but he knows it's not time yet. If he plants it now, it's too soon and he's not going to have a harvest. And I think sometimes God is waiting for us to get ready. Sometimes that's why we have to wait on our prayers to be answered, is because God knows we're not ready for the answer yet. And he has to prepare us and do his work in us so that we can be prepared. And I also think that he waits so that we will learn the joy of waiting on him. At Kentwood and Westwood, almost every time we're together, we close by singing In the Garden. That is the favorite song, it seems, of those people that come to our Bible study there. And a couple of weeks ago, a phrase in that song hit me. We all know he walks with me and he talks with me, and what a blessing that is. But then it says, the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. There is a joy, there is a peace, there is a strength that comes from tarrying, from waiting in the presence of God. There's a verse that says, Samuel went in and sat before the Lord. Sometimes it's good just to sit in the presence of God. To just, if you have a quiet place in your house, to turn on some praise music, or turn on, the Bible on tape or something and listen to some encouraging scriptures and just sit and soak. You know how sometimes when you're achy, you just feel like, I just need to sit and soak in a hot tub? Sometimes we just need to sit and soak in God's presence and wait for him so that we can experience The presence of God, that's at a different level than the hit and run stuff of so much of our lives. Another reason we should wait, Psalm 25, verses 4 and 5. Show me your ways, O Lord. Teach me your paths. Lead me in your truth and teach me. You are the God of my salvation. On thee do I wait all the day. Show me your ways. Teach me your paths. I'm waiting on you. We wait for God's teachings. We wait for him to show us his specific direction for our lives. God has a general will for each of us, to give our lives to him, to live our lives for him. There are things that just every Christian should be doing. It's God's will for every Christian. But then God has a plan specific to each of us. Here is what I want you to do. Here are the abilities I've given you because I want you to do this for me. We need sometimes to wait on the Lord so that we can get that direction. Lord, what is it that you want me to do in this situation? The last time we studied the Lord's Prayer together, I gained an insight that I had never seen before in Give Us This Day Our Daily Bread. I used to always just teach that had to do with, physical provision. And it does, but it means more than that. Bread is what you need for the day. And what Jesus is teaching us to pray is, Lord, you know what I'm going to need today. Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially, with wisdom and understanding, you know what I'm going to need today. Give me today my daily bread. Give me today the specific direction that I need today to face what I'm going to face today, to have the answer to the challenges that are going to come up in my life today. I need your direction. Lord, I wait on you. Show me your ways. Teach me your paths. I'm waiting on you. Now, in case none of these verses fit, Psalm 39, verse 7 is for us. And now, Lord, what wait I for? My hope is in you. In other words, I think what David is saying is sometimes, Lord, I don't even know what I'm waiting for. I'm just waiting. I don't know what for, but I'm waiting. The good news about that is that God knows what we need, and it may not be what we think we need, but he knows what we need. You will, at some time or another in your life, face a time when it seems that God has pushed the pause button in your life. It feels like nothing's happening. There's been no progress being made in anything. You're just waiting, and you don't know why. That's this verse. Lord, what am I waiting for? I don't know what it is, but my hope is in you. And I know that you know. And when the time is right, the answer will come. So as we wait, the tendency is to get discouraged. And so God gives us some promises for waiting on him. Psalm 25, verse 3, the King James says, let none that wait on thee be ashamed. The NIV says, no one whose hope is in you will ever be put to shame. But sometimes when we're waiting, we wonder if God's really going to come through, don't we? Maybe it's just me. I don't know. Maybe you never have those questions. But sometimes when I'm waiting, I think, God, are you going to fix this? Is there going to be an answer here at some point? Well, the good news is those who wait on the Lord will never be put to shame. Just keep waiting. God's answer is going to come. Psalm 27, verse 14. While you're waiting, wait for the Lord, be strong and take heart. The King James says, wait for the Lord, he will strengthen your heart. Wait for the Lord. When does God give us strength? As we are waiting on him. See, we want the strength before we have to wait. He gives us his strength during the process as we are waiting. If God always gave you the strength to face a burden before you carried a burden, you'd never know what it was like to carry a burden. But when God gives you strength as you are waiting on him, in the process of the waiting, you gain strength. In the process of waiting, you gain trust. In the process of waiting, you learn faith that God is there as you wait. So somebody said the essential attitude necessary for waiting on God is courage. We have to believe that I'm waiting on God and it's not going to be in vain. I'm not waiting to feel some kind of an emotion. I'm waiting on God to step in and answer this. Psalm 40, David gives us his own experience. I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry. And verses 2 and 3 tell us what happened. He lifted me out of the slimy pit. He set my feet on a rock, gave me a firm place to stand. He put a new song in my mouth, a hymn of praise to our God. We wait for God's deliverance. And when he delivers us, then he puts a new song in our mouth, and he says, many will see and fear and put their trust in the Lord. In other words, I don't know that we're aware of how much people are watching us when we call ourselves Christians. They may not admit it. They may not even be aware of it. But there's a certain kind of sensitivity that they have. This person is a Christian. They're going through a difficult time. Let me see how they handle it. David says, as we wait on God, and then God delivers us, and he comes through for us again, other people see it. And we have an influence for God because we've waited on him. We know the story of Job not because of the part of his life where everything seemed to come easily to him. We know Job because of the part of his life where everything was falling apart and he stayed true to God. We're influenced by that part of his life. And there are people who say, well, Christians never have any problems, and they obviously haven't lived very long or known very many Christians. But there is a testimony that God gets praise when his people go through those times of waiting, those times of needing patience, and they maintain their faith in God. And then when the answer comes, people say, what do you know? They stayed true. And so he says, you wait on God because you will then be able to be an influence on others as they see God come through for you. Well, then what do we do while we're waiting? It's I tell you, I hate to wait. How do you do it? Well, first of all, you do it obediently. Psalm 37, verse 34, wait on the Lord and keep his way. Waiting on God does not mean we go out and do whatever it is we want to do, and then whenever God gets around to answering our prayer, we're coming back to him. No, we stay obedient to him while we're waiting. In other words, just because God may have pushed the pause button in what's going on in your life, you don't push the pause button on your faith. You don't push the pause button on your obedience. Sometimes we tend to do that. Okay, God, if you're not going to answer this prayer, see if I keep living for you. The old Quaker's prayer. Lord, I'm not surprised you have so few friends when I see how you treat the ones you do have. And then sometimes it's like, wait a minute, God, I'm waiting for you. And David says, no, you wait on the Lord and keep his way. While you're waiting, don't give in to the temptation to backslide. Don't give in to the temptation to start fading. Well, the Lord's not answering my prayer, so I'm not going to pray anymore. No. The Lord's not answering my prayers. I said, Lord, here I am again. Is my prayer wrong, or am I wrong, or what do I need to be doing? But Lord, I just need you to know, like Jacob said, I'm not going to let you go till you bless me. Well, the Lord's not answering my prayer, so I'm going to stop reading the Bible and going to church. No. Keep reading the Bible, keep going to church, because one of those times in the Bible or in the church service, you're going to get your answer. So wait on the Lord obediently. Keep doing what you know to do. Secondly, wait on the Lord exclusively. Psalm 62, verse 5, wait in God alone. Now, let me confess to you, I know you never have this problem, but let me confess to you that it is possible to wait on God without waiting only on God. Here's what I mean. Early in our ministry, we were blessed to have some people in our congregation. Well, early in our ministry, everybody in their church were older than we were because we started young. First church I pastored, my organist was born in the 1800s. Okay, so and that's not an exaggeration. So people have always been older than me, except for y'all. You're younger than me, but we have always been blessed in our early ministry to have an older couple in the congregation that kind of adopted us as their children. And sometimes, if those were people of means, that was a blessing. We got some nice Christmas gifts. The first new car we had because that family in the church said, you need to get rid of that old junker you've got, and you go down to the dealership and we will give you the down payment. Oh, thank you very much, and so what I struggled with during that time now none of y'all have been that nice to me, so I need to preach another sermon. But at that stage of my ministry, what I found is I wasn't really waiting on the Lord. I was waiting on them to hear that I had a need, right? Because, well, if somehow they could get the message, then they would help us. That's not waiting on the Lord. That's waiting on somebody else. And so maybe David had that problem too. So he said, wait on God alone. Okay, Lord, if you don't come through with me, I don't have any rich people to help me out here, Lord. It's got to be you. Wait on. Somebody said you will find out when God is all you need when you get to the point where God is all you have. And there's a lot of truth in that. Third, wait for the Lord hopefully. Psalm 33 verse 20, we wait in hope for the Lord. Psalm 130 verse 5, I wait for the Lord, my soul waits in his word, I put my hope. Again, there's that concept of faith. You wait for the Lord hopefully or with faith that you know God is going to answer. Again, he's a crock pot, not a microwave. And it'll be a while, but he's going to answer. We wait hopefully, and we wait eagerly. Psalm 130, verse 6. My soul waits for the Lord more than the watchmen wait for the morning. Those of you who work night shifts know how much you long for the morning. If you've ever been sick at night, you long for the morning. If I could just see some light outside, I think I'll feel better. David says there's a sense in which that's our attitude as we wait for God. God, I can't wait. I know it's coming. I know the answer is closer today than it was yesterday, and there's an eagerness about that, and there's an expectancy about that. Psalm 62, verse 1, truly my soul waits on God. From him comes my salvation. Verse 5, my soul waits only on the Lord. My expectation is from him. As you continue to study this word wait, you will find out that one of its usages in the Old Testament was of a pregnant lady in labor pains. That's that word expectation. That's that reminder that waiting on God is not a passive thing. You ladies that have been in labor know there's nothing passive about labor, and there's something about that sense of work and pain that's going to lead to something special. And that's part of waiting on God. Waiting on God is not kicking back in your recliner saying, oh, well, Lord, if you want me to have a job, you'll send it to me. No. Waiting is, I've got a full-time job right now. It's looking for a job. And while I'm doing this, I'm waiting on God for the right answer, but I'm not kicked back lazy. I'm doing something expecting that God is going to give an answer. Waiting on God with the expectation of, if you will, what God is birthing in you. and what good is going to come next. But while we do it, we still have to be patient. Psalm 37. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Don't fret when men succeed in their ways and they carry out their wicked schemes. Evil men will be cut off. Those who hope in the Lord will eventually, at some point, inherit the land. Wait patiently. And wait continually. Psalm 25:5. On thee do I wait all the day. I think what David is saying there is waiting on God is not something you have to do once in your life. Waiting on God is an important element of the Christian faith experience. Because God, who wasn't in a hurry yesterday, is not going to be in a hurry tomorrow. And so we have to continue. It's like we live in that tension of, I know God is answering my prayer. I know he's at work, but I'm still waiting. But while I'm waiting, I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do. Like David, I go in and sit before the Lord and just soak up his presence. I think I put this in your notes because I wanted you to get it, because this is important. Often we will have to wait for God. But while we are waiting, our responsibility is to stay obedient, to do what we know we're already supposed to do. There was a time in my ministry when I was waiting, and I was not waiting well. I was waiting, honestly, what I was doing, I was waiting on God to release me to go somewhere else. I was frustrated and aggravated. So, Lord, I got to get out of this place, And I went to a seminar, and, a group of us pastors were talking about our various frustrations, and I was sharing with them that frustration, and an older pastor said to me, Ken, here's what you need to understand. God can't steer a parked car. He said, there's some things that you should be doing where you are. You need to do those things where you are, and then God can steer you where he wants you to go. And boy, was that a word for me. And that's what I'm saying here. Don't stop being obedient while you're waiting on God's next thing for you. A lot of times people are looking for a different job, and so they stop doing the job they have. God's not going to give you another job until you're faithful doing, what you're supposed to be doing where you are. So do what you know to already do. Don't stop doing the last thing God's called you to do. Be obedient to what you know you're supposed to be doing now, and when the time is right, God is going to move, and you will give birth to whatever the next thing is for you. Several years ago, I heard a song by John Waller called While I'm Waiting. And the chorus of this song really is where we need to close. It says, while I'm waiting, I will serve you. While I'm waiting, I will worship. While I'm waiting, I will not faint. I'll be running the race, even while I wait. Those of you who are watching online, we're going to leave you now. And I just encourage you to go online and find that song, While I'm Waiting by John Waller. If you have a streaming music service, you'll be able to find it. iTunes has it. It's on YouTube. You'll be able to find this song called While I'm Waiting. I'm going to play it to you now as our closing thought. God bless you.